Thack-A-Nory, 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 Thack-A-Nory.
Welcome to Thack-A-Nory, and to find out why it's called Thack-A-Nory you need to look at episode 1. But basically it's all about myself, Ian Thacker, giving you an idea about the technical side to video and audio recording, but without being too technical. A technical insight without too much numbers, particularly we try and get rid of the maths. Today we're going to look at microphones, and we're going to start looking at microphones. We're going to look at how they actually work, and we're going to start that process by taking a magnet. This is a magnet from a computer hard drive. It's actually a very powerful magnet. We're going to take a toilet roll with some cable surrounding it, and we're going to pass the magnet through the toilet roll. Well, we'll do that again actually, and we'll connect it up to a very sensitive meter, and we'll see what happens when we move that magnet through the coil of wire. So we've got our magnet, we've got our tube with a coil of wire put at the end. It's connected to this highly sensitive meter in microamps. Look carefully at this display because it won't move for very long. It will just flicker. Put the magnet in the bottom, downhill, here we go. It's 8, I think. Do it again. 9. Moving magnet in a coil of wire produces electricity. Not much, but enough. And if we look at this diagram, you can see the idea here is there's somebody speaking into this diaphragm, which is an eardrum for the microphone. And that's connected to a bar magnet, and the bar magnet moves with the diaphragm inside a coil of wire. That produces, as we've just shown, that very small electrical current, which we put into an amplifier, and the amplifier's got enough grunt in it to eventually power a loudspeaker. Now the loudspeaker, by the way, works exactly the same way as the microphone. It's a coil of wire in a magnetic field connected in fact to some cardboard, and that is what you're listening to right now. Now the slight difference between the diagram and reality: in this diagram the diaphragm is connected to the magnet, and the magnet moves. In reality, normally the coil of wire is around the diaphragm, and it's the coil of wire that moves. The wire is very, very thin, and it's far easier to do that, to get the wire to move, than to get the magnet to move. But the theory is the same, and it works. And this microphone is this sort of magnetic microphone. They're known as dynamic microphones, and they're very simple, and they always work. There is another way of doing it. Now, I know at school you were told that if you have an electrical circuit, well, you have to have an electrical circuit. Remember, perhaps, I assume you did this, you had a battery and a bulb and a couple of wires, and you tested whether different things were insulators or conductors, and if you break the wires, the bulb goes out. No circuit, no signal, right? Wrong. You can pass a signal through an air gap, but you have to have it very specially constructed. You have to have 2 big plates, and the signal has to keep on changing. 2 big plates, sides of computers. Now the thing is, actually, if you don't have a signal at all, you just put a circuit in, put a power supply in, put a sensitive meter on or amplifier on, and put these plates side by side, and then move the plates, you get a small electrical current. What it is that there's an attraction of the electrons on one plate pulling the electrons in and out on the other. It's a bit like rubbing a balloon and putting it on the wall. The balloon is attracted to the wall, it pulls to the wall. Well, the plates pull towards each other, and because that doesn't really work, they pull the electrons and they pull the electrical circuit. Very, very small, very subtle, and we're going to prove that right now. So here we have our 2 plates and our battery and a sensitive meter in millivolts, and I move the plates away from each other and you get a reading. Move it back and the reading changes the other way. And this is how these other types of microphones work, known as condenser mics. There's 2 subsets, but we won't worry about that for this. And so you have, again, your diaphragm or eardrum. It has to be able to conduct electricity. Then we have another plate behind it that's stationary, and we put power into that circuit. And this is the snag. You need power for this to work. We used a 9-volt battery. Normally it's 48 volts. And the other snag here is that you need power, but amplifiers don't like power going up them, so you then have to strip that power off before you go into the amplifier, before you go into the loudspeaker. So why would you bother? Well, condenser mics, not always, it's not totally true, but they tend to be higher quality than dynamics. Almost any serious recording uses a condenser mic of some description. Now, all this power shenanigans, you might think that makes using these microphones extremely complicated. Well, back in the 60s and 70s it was. You had separate power supplies and separate boxes and all sorts. But in the end, somebody came up with the idea of hiding the power onto the cable that you use just to connect the microphone with. And this is known as phantom power. The other term for it is plus 48V, because it's 48 volts. And these days, these things are all built into the audio mixers and cameras. So on this old camera, there's a switch here marked plus 48V. And if you don't know what you're doing or you're not sure, you leave that off. Because if you're connecting a radio microphone to your camera or another electronic device, they don't like it up 'em, Mr. Mannering, really. 48 volts, you wouldn't like 48 volts up your backside, would you? So leave that off unless nothing happens, or unless you know for sure that the microphone that you're connecting to needs phantom power. So that's how microphones work, but different microphones have different characteristics. And there are 4 main characteristics. We'll start by listening to a very simple, straightforward dynamic mic, and to do that I'm going to put some headphones on so I can actually hear as well, and I'm going to switch the mic over. So here we have a stick mic, and this stick mic is what we call omnidirectional. So if I move it around now, there is a bit of sensitivity there. You can hear that. It's just slightly more sensitive in that direction. But basically all the way around, it's more or less the same all the way around. I mean, that sensitivity is because it's not a particularly good microphone. But, you know, it's open all the way around. That is omnidirectional. A more common microphone type is what's known as cardioid. So this is sensitive in this direction, but as I go around the back, you can hear that it almost completely disappears. Yeah, so that's cardioid. Most mics are cardioid. Now, there's yet another type. Now I hold this at some distance away, and this rifle mic, this is hypercardioid, and I'll prove it because I've disappeared almost completely, and in fact it's very sensitive. Can you hear how that just disappears? So there are these different characteristics that microphones have, and we can draw those so we can give people an idea visually of what they do, and these are known as their polar patterns. Here we have the polar pattern for the most common type of microphone, the cardioid, and then we'll go back to that microphone we first looked at, and for this we need to know Latin, because omni in Latin is all directions. That's what omni means in Latin, so an omnidirectional microphone. There's one we haven't come across yet, which we'll come across later, figure of 8. Now, the first quality microphones were figure of 8, but they're not so common these days. And then we looked at hypercardioid, and you'll notice here, in fact, that hypercardioids are also sensitive towards the rear just slightly. So let's look at those different types of microphones that you might use on a shoot particularly. And again, there are 4 types. There's 4 main polar patterns. There's 4 main types of microphone you may take with you. And of those 4 main types, actually, in your kit, you're going to concentrate on the first 3. So the first one for video setup, this is the lapel mic. For news, for documentaries. In the old days, you'd have a boom operator out of shot. These days, lapel mics. Lapel mics are brilliant, particularly the radio versions, excellent. The main lapel mic is the Sony ECM77, and this is one you see in all news presentation. Great indoors, rubbish outdoors. You'd sometimes have to use them out of doors for pieces to camera, great big fluffies all over them. They suffer really badly from wind noise. The other main microphone that you have on video, and particularly news and documentary, is a Sennheiser 416. This isn't a Sennheiser 416, but it's very similar, a rifle mic. But for this to work outside, you need that encasement with the suspensions and the fluffy cover all the way around. And that fluffy cover means that this ends up looking like a sausage dog, and this tends to be known as a dog mic. But be warned, these aren't very good indoors. The way that they are hypersensitive in one direction isn't down to electronics, it's all down to acoustics and these slots in here and how the sound hits these slots. And a whole load of physics and maths makes that work. And that's absolutely great until you go and walk into a toilet. Because when you walk into a toilet, the sound doesn't come from here, it comes from here and here and here and here and here and here. And all this bit of physics collapses and you end up basically with one of these, which you then hold out of shot down here somewhere, 2.5 meters away, and you pick up all those reflections. So you may say, well, I'm not going to do any shooting in a toilet. Doctor's surgery, any room with loads of reverb, these are really bad. There are times when neither personal nor stick will do. You're indoors, it's an echoey room, you haven't got 2 personals and you need to interview someone. So the rule goes, if it's indoors it's personal, if it's outdoors it's a dog mic. It's a rough rule. And if neither of those 2 work, it's one of these. Got an interview. The other reason for using one of these is you're in a very noisy environment. And this looks okay in shot and that doesn't. You do increasingly see these in shot these days and it's ghastly. But that looks all right. And you can get this a lot nearer than the lapel mic. And then there's a thing called the inverse square law, which means if you're listening to sound really close to the microphone, what happens is the sound away from the microphone disappears. Look it up, it's true of light as well, the inverse square law. So you can have a rock concert going on and you can be doing a piece to camera like this and the cameraman cannot hear you unless they've got the headphones on. This is pretending to be an Electro Voice RE50. It isn't one. Nothing here today is what it says it is. But the Electro Voice RE50 looks very similar. Omnidirectional, dynamic, and the only good thing to be said about it is that if you hit it with a 6-inch nail and a hammer, it will survive, which is why news crews use it. It's not because it's a quality microphone. It's okay. So you've got your personal, you've got your stick, you've got your rifle mic. But I said that there were 4 microphones and 4 famous types of microphone particularly. Well, those 3 are the ones you're going to have in your kit. You're not going to have this 4th one in your kit, not unless you've got a lot of money. But you may borrow one or hire one for the day when they turn around and say, would you just go and shoot an orchestra? It doesn't happen often, but it does happen from time to time. And the answer you need in that sort of situation is something like this. And I'm going to have a listen to this with you, so we'll do that right now. So this is an SE4400A, which is a Chinese copy of an AKG 414, otherwise known by one of the sound supervisors at Radio 3 as God's Own Microphone. And even though this is a cheap copy, you probably noticed that the sound quality is better than anything else you've heard thus far. And you can hear the street noise as well. Now, they're not only is that true, and this is a condenser microphone, by the way, so it needs phantom power, but the amazing thing about this particular microphone, and actually the one it's copying, the 414, is that it's got switches on it. This is the answer to everything. So at the moment this is a cardioid microphone, but I can prove that. There we go, it's a cardioid mic, but let's make it figure of 8, because there we are, it's now figure of 8. And let's make it omni. So here we go, it's now omnidirectional, and we'll put it back to cardioid, and we'll make it hypercardioid, and it's now hypercardioid, so it's very sensitive in the middle there. Not only that, if you've got rumble noise going on, a lot of background hum going on, it's got its own built-in rumble filter. You may not be able to hear that's gone in actually, but more than that, this is a very sensitive microphone, and as I bring it nearer to me you can hear it start to get a bit edgy and distorted. You can hear that distortion now. Well, if this was trying to be a bass drum mic, it would just take the sound desk out. It really wouldn't work well at all. But it's got its own built-in attenuator, so you can get close to really loud sources. In fact, it's got 2 levels of attenuation, so you can even put it here. And this, I'll put it back. This is the coolest mic in the circuit. This is just it. So why don't we use them? Well, some people think they're ugly, and they're wrong. I think they should be in shot for everything, really. You can use this for absolutely everything. And so, actually in a new setup, you would buy everything else first. But for recording of almost anything, this can be a bass drum mic, it can be a vocal mic, you need a pop shield, but it can be a vocal mic. You could mic a guitar amp with it. You can mic anything with this thing. They tend to be used more for the classical and semi-serious end of the market, but got a piano, you mic it with these. Got an orchestra and a pair of these crossed cardioid, that's one way of doing it, and you've done it. You've done your orchestra. So yes, they're expensive. This is about 300 quid a hit, and the 414 is 400, 500, 600, that sort of figure. But yeah, you can hear. So when everything else runs out, you run out, you borrow, you beg, and you get yourself a 414, or if you have to put up with it, one of these things, SE4400, and that is the answer to all the other problems you may have when you're recording.